anybody, it becomes whoever agrees with me sort of claim. And that's not really that impressive.
It's really not. I want to jump to his presentation that he posted after the debate on the earliest church fathers allegedly not believing that scripture was, the New Testament rather, was authoritative scripture. Specifically the section on the Epistle of Barnabas. And I'm just going to read, we're going to listen through a bunch of that. So I'm going to save my critiques of his case here and just focus on the standards of evidence he wants here. So for context, love you, Horn, but my word, you sound like an atheist in this video. You really, really do. If we just, if we just ignore the fact that you are Trent Horn, the Roman Catholic apologist, well, technically you go to a Byzantine liturgy, I think. But anyway, and if you just tone down your statements about the authority of the church a little bit, I could mistake you for an atheist in this video. I really could. Like, it really, he really falls for his own Protestants argue like atheist thing in this video. And so I just kind of want to focus on that bit in this, on that tactic, on that standard in this part. I'm not going to give the critique here. I'll save that for my collab with Father James. So we'll just listen here.
Prophesies and contains allegorical descriptions of the New Testament and of Jesus' times all throughout the document. There are 9 references to the Old Testament as scripture. Well, 13 if you include the Old Testament as scripture. 1 reference to the book of Enoch as Acts 14:22. The saying there, it seems to be attributed to Jesus. It's not called sacred scripture. It may formally cite Matthew 22:14. Once again, this is another ambiguous one. The only
pay attention.
And we'll see this, by the way. I've read, it might be in Metzger, I'm not sure, but I've read Protestants who say, oh, well, the earliest church fathers believed that the discussion in the New Testament. Barnabas says here, so great signs and wonders were wrought in Israel. They were thus at length abandoned. Let us beware, lest we be found fulfilling the saying, as it is written, many are called, but few are chosen. The only place you find that is in Matthew 22:14, where Jesus is telling a parable about the person invited to the banquet. He doesn't have his garment. It's an allegory, a parable about how if you're not united to Christ, you will be thrown out. You'll be be damned. You'll be in hell.
Really quickly, pay attention to this. So that text very explicitly says, as it is written, and then quotes a statement verbatim from the Gospel of Matthew. And I mean verbatim, not just an English translation. I actually checked the Greek. It is verbatim, except for the particle gar, which means for. So like you're giving a reason for something. For many are called, but few are chosen. But that is inconsequential because that is flowing on from another part. So it's perfectly reasonable for one or so words to drop out. That's perfectly normal in quotations and citations of texts in the ancient world, and even in the modern world. We do this all the time. We'll consciously or subconsciously drop off a word or two in order to make a slightly better sense. Either way, though, it's talking about something that's written, it's a text, and it's verbatim. Okay, so it is a verbatim quote of the passage in Matthew. So something that is, so it's well beyond would seem to imply. It is in your face, red alarms clear that it's citing the Gospel of Matthew. Now, so it goes well beyond Trent's own standard of acceptable arguments that he established in the debate. He is willing to accept arguments from things that would seem to imply a certain conclusion. And yet when he gets to here, when something is very clear, very, very clear, very obvious, at least on a face value reading, that it's citing the Gospel of Matthew, here's how he treats it.
Cast out into the outer darkness, men gnash their teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. So this is what the character in the parable says that Jesus is telling. So Barnabas may be quoting it here, but once again, this is a little bit odd. Barnabas quotes Jesus. The Epistle of Barnabas quotes Jesus and says, as the Lord said, or as the Lord spoke. But here, he doesn't do that. He just says, for it is written. And this may be, all of this, including what Jesus is saying here, for many are called, but few are chosen. They all just might be referencing an older Jewish proverb related to the Old Testament. There's something similar in 4 Ezra 8:3. There be many created, but few shall be delivered. That's why Jonathan Lucadou, in his major commentary on Barnabas, probably one of the most recent major commentaries on the Epistle of Barnabas, He says, it is difficult to adduce clear examples of New Testament quotations within the Epistle of Barnabas. Given the small amount of possible Matthean or synoptic materials elsewhere in the letter, it is difficult to argue with a high degree of certainty for a literary relationship between Barnabas and the canonical Gospels. Though, so I'm going to add a question mark there, but I could see how many people would see that Barnabas is quoting Matthew 22:14 as scripture, but it still seems ambiguous to me, and other scholars do recognize that.
Just notice the night and day difference in standards. He is willing to base his faith, at least in part, with respect to evidences from scripture, on passages that would seem to imply his conclusion. Because at least he admits that they're not explicit about a post-apostolic magisterium. So that's cool. I'm glad he did that. But then when you get something that is on its face very explicit, and there is no other evidence, no other text, no other candidate text that comes even close to being a potential citation, he is willing to give another text for Ezra or some unknown Jewish proverb out in the wind, borderline equal weight with a text that has the statement verbatim from the same socio-religious context and near contemporary context as the Epistle of Barnabas. Do we see the night and day difference in standards here? That is, I think, a really big and beautiful summary of the selectivity of the pop Romanist skeptical paradigm. It is rules for thee, but not for me.